The soldiers looked at her, a beanpole, breasts like baby mangoes straining against her flowered dress. One of the soldiers smiled, grabbed her breasts. Her nipples hurt under his fingers. She tried to bite him. He felt her teeth graze his arm and slapped her. Another slap. She tried to scream but could not. No energy to fight back as he spread her legs, tore off her underwear. One by one, the other men came and thrust themselves into her until she started to descend into a darkness, a void where she felt nothing. On Black Sisters Street is the award-winning novel by the 2012 winner of the Nigeria Prize for Literature, Chika Onigwe. The novel deals with the issue of transatlantic prostitution and is centered around the lives of 4 women who have made their way from Africa to red light districts of Europe in search of a better life. Growing up in Enugu in the eastern part of Nigeria, Chika says her parents sparked her interest in writing. At the age of 9, in an attempt to write her first book, she convinced her father to buy her a typewriter, and since then she has never stopped writing.
I think the most important aspect of my childhood that has contributed, not to the issues I write about, but to me being a writer, is the fact that we always had books at home. And my parents were very, very supportive. So I wrote all those little ditties and stories, and they were excited, or they pretended to be excited, and they praised me. And they fed my ego. And at that point, you needed that feeding to be able to continue writing. They made me think that, yes, I could do this.
Chika considers herself a feminist and often uses her novels to address the plight of marginalized women in her society. In one of her novels, The Night Dancer, the heroine is a single mother in a society where marriage is the only route to respectability. Her insistence on living the single life alienates her from her family.
Growing up, I heard such stories, about women who couldn't live in certain relationships or in certain marriages, and who left those marriages, and who were punished by society for doing that. So, and as a kid, I loved to read, and some of the stories I read then sort of come back to me now, and some of them contribute to the stories, the kind of stories that I write now.
After her final exams at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, where she studied English, Chika Onigwe moved to Belgium to join her husband. Back home in Nigeria, she was raised in a strong Catholic home, where certain topics were considered taboo. But in Europe, Chika came in contact with a totally different culture and a way of life that was almost shocking.
I was raised in a very conservative Catholic home, and we weren't allowed to use words like sex, for example, at home. And then I come here, and if you take the train from any part of Belgium and you go past Brussels North, you see the women, no matter what time of day it is, you see them in display windows waiting for customers or calling customers. And that was a huge cultural shock for me, to be in a place where sex was so much in the open as to be sold in the open, legally as well. And then when I heard that many of the African prostitutes in Antwerp were from Benin City, my curiosity became almost unbearable. I had to do something.
To satisfy her curiosity, Chika Onigwe decided to delve into the underworld of Belgium's red light districts, disguised as a prostitute.
I wanted to know why they would come all this way. I wanted to know how. I wanted to know what sort of girls did that. I had to satisfy that curiosity, and one of the ways of doing that was by writing about it. And that's when I started on Black Sisters Street.
From their glass windows, they watched the lives outside. Young men looking for adventure between the thighs of African women. Bachelors seeking a woman's warmth without commitment. Old men looking for something young. This street bears witness to all kinds of men.
Just feeling how it was to be a black woman on that street at a certain time of day and feeling that vulnerable helped me. I could transpose that into my characters. You know, like the first day Sisi went to the red light district. I could feel how she would have felt.
During the time she spent writing the novel On Black Sister Street, Chika had to rely on interviews and stories she heard from the Nigerian prostitutes living and working in Belgium to craft her narrative.
There's a cafe which is very notorious for harboring illegal Nigerian prostitutes, even though the owner denies it. And so I went in there, and that was actually my first contact with the Nigerian prostitutes. So I spoke to some of the women there, and speaking to them helped me see things completely differently, because I went to them with a certain point of view and with a certain perception, with a certain prejudice, basically. And one of the first questions I was asked, at some point, one of the first questions I was asked was, if your father were diabetic and had no money to pay for his medication, but you could afford it by doing this, would you or would you not do it? And it occurred to me for the first time that shame is such a huge luxury. You know, there are people who cannot afford to have shame. And my anger moved away from the women and moved to the government. What sort of government makes this a much more attractive alternative, you know, for young women? I think one of the reasons why Nigeria, not just Lagos, is hard to survive is that there's a huge disparity between the wealthy and the poor. And I think it's a lot easier to accept that all fingers are not equal if the difference in the length of the fingers isn't that much. But if it's, you know, that huge, then it becomes a lot more difficult.
Chika continues to blame the system for the plight of these women and believes there will be no solution until the government does the right thing.
Let people have equal access to the country's wealth. I think for as long as only very few people have access to that wealth, you're going to be having this kind of, you know, this kind of issues. You're going to be having mothers who encourage their daughters to come to Europe and work as prostitutes, because that's what is happening now.
In 2012, On Black Sister Street was among 214 books entered for the most prestigious literature prize on the continent, the Nigeria Prize for Literature. Later that year, Chika Onigwe was declared the winner.
I'm not a very self-confident writer, so when it comes to writing, I'm assailed by self-doubts. I sweat over every single sentence I write. I drip blood over every single line I write. And what any prize does, basically, is, and especially a prize like this, is to validate that work. And it's given me a little bit more confidence. And I mean, for a writer who struggles with self-doubt, that sort of validation is needed.
By this win, Chika Onigwe joins a growing list of laureates, featuring such names as Gabriel Okara, Professor Ezenwa Ohaito, Ahmed Yerima, Professor Akachi Adimora Ezigbo, Mabel Shegun, Kaine Agari, Isiaba Irobi, and Adeleke Adeyemi, who is also known as Mai Nasara. She continues to use her art to address the plight of marginalized women in society and has joined the fight against transatlantic prostitution and sex slavery.
For me, the most important thing I've taken out is that the world is in black and white. There are different shades of gray. And I think I said this already, that shame is such a huge luxury. And, but if everything is going okay for you, if life is fine or reasonably fine, you don't really realize how much of a luxury that shame is. That for some people, they can't even afford that.